Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel where today we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 fantasy books that I am super excited to read. Now this video will be broken up into two parts. The first part is going to be an update on my previous top 5 list, basically what I thought about all those books. And then the second part is going to be my new list, but I will leave the timestamp down below if you are just interested in my new list. But let's go ahead and just jump right in. So I did put these books in order from I liked it the least to I liked it the most. And the very first thing on my list is actually James Potter and the Hall of Elders Crossing by G. Norman Lippert. This is a fan fiction and it's following Harry Potter's son James as he goes through school. And I did not read this. And that was because I made this list last year and I did not get to this particular book before J.K. Rowling made an ass of herself on Twitter. After she did that, I made a conscious decision that I was not going to feature Harry Potter content on this channel. Now, I know that this is a fan fiction and that like J.K. Rowling didn't write it, but it's still a fan fiction of a J.K. Rowling work. And so I decided that I just wasn't going to read it. So I don't have any thoughts and feelings about like the quality of this because I just decided to not read it. Next up we have Uprooted by Naomi Novik. So this is a standalone, I think, young adult fantasy that follows our main character of Agnieszka, and she lives in a village next to this magical wood. And the magical wood has things, beasts and all kinds of things that kind of come out and try to attack the villages. But it's okay because you have a wizard who lives in a tower next to the wood who protects all of these villages. And in return, he asks that like his basic needs are taken care of, like food. And he gets to choose a young lady every so often to come and serve him in his tower. So Agnieszka happens to be of an age where she and all the people that are her age are going to be part of this group of girls to be chosen from. And everybody is very sure that the person to be chosen is going to be Agnieszka's best friend. And then the choosing happens and it's not. It's Agnieszka. And then the story goes from there. I DNF'd this book after about 50 pages because I just did not like anything. I did not like our main character. I thought that I just didn't like how she was written. Honestly, I could not relate to her. I could not get next to her as a character. Our wizard character was absolutely a jerk, even when you kind of controlled for the fact that you're seeing him through Agnieszka's eyes, and she very clearly is not quite right about what he's actually feeling. Like, we as readers can tell that, but even controlling for all that, he's still a jerk. And then there was an attempted rape, and I was just like, I'm out. I don't need all this. And so, yeah, I DNF'd it at page 50. After that, we have The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. So obviously this is a darling of book 2, but if you don't know what it is, this is an adult epic fantasy trilogy, and it follows our two main characters of Vin and Kelsier. Vin is a thief, and Kelsier is the leader of a rebellion who is trying to overthrow the Dark Lord. And one of the big draws of this particular series is that it has an incredibly interesting magical system that is based on ingesting metals and burning them to allow for interesting physical abilities. So I didn't like this. I ended up rating this 3 stars because I did recognize that some of the things that Brandon Sanderson did in here, he did decently well, but they just were a personal preference. I just didn't like it for my own thing. So for example, one of how Brandon Sanderson tends to handle pacing is that the first part of the book is really slow. It's a lot of setup, a lot of information given to you. And then it starts picking up in the middle, and then the end is incredibly fast. And that is just not something that I like. It's not inherently bad. It's just not what I like. But there were other things that I did think were not done as well. For example, I thought that the characters in general were very, very underdeveloped. So it was kind of a mix of things that I thought weren't done very well and things that I personally did not like. So I did give this 3 stars on Goodreads, but if I'm going from just general enjoyment, like my personal enjoyment, it's more of a 2 to 2.5. So I have no intention of continuing this series. After that, we have Heroine Complex by Sarah Kuhn. So this is the first book in an adult superhero story series, and we're following our main character of Evie Tanaka, and she is the assistant to San Francisco's premier superhero, Aveda Jupiter. And Evie is an amazing assistant, especially given that Aveda is such a diva. But Evie's personal life is a little bit messy. But we come to this situation where Evie has been asked to dress up as Aveda, including an illusion, and go to this function because Aveda cannot. And at this function, there's a situation that happens where either Evie needs to kind of stand in the background and not be a superhero, or she needs to help and use the powers that she has kept hidden this entire time and deal with the fallout from all of that. And the story goes from there. And this is a debut novel, and so I was a little bit generous with it. I gave it 3.75 stars, but I'd probably dump that down to about 3.5. But it's like the story itself is not terrible, but it's really unoriginal. And it's the kind of superhero unoriginal story where you generally focus more on things outside of that basic plot. But the stuff outside of that basic plot wasn't quite enough to carry this super unoriginal plot forward. There was issues with the ending as well. The characters themselves are generally underdeveloped, except for Evie and Aveda. Evie, I actually really liked as a character, and Aveda was a really nicely developed antagonist. Now, the big thing that I think is very cool about this book is that it is a predominantly female cast, and our 2 main characters are Asian American. And so being able to see Asian American superheroes is just kind of awesome. I will say that there are content warnings for this book for emotional manipulation. And then lastly, we have the Kate Daniels series by Ilona Andrews. And this starts with Magic Bites. I did read the entire 10-book series, as well as a good chunk of the novellas and one of the spin-off books. But this is an adult urban fantasy series that follows our main character of Kate Daniels. She lives in an alternate version of Atlanta, Georgia, where magic comes in waves, and when it does, nothing technology really works. And so you have to use magic, and when magic leaves, the magic stops working, and you have to use your technological stuff again. And Kate is a mercenary, and when we first meet her, she is just trying to make ends meet, as well as keep her big, dangerous secret, secret. So I really loved this series. In the end, I just absolutely adored it. So the world building is a really intricate and very nicely done. I love our main character of Kate. I didn't love all the other side characters, but I really did love watching Kate interact with those characters, which I think is good. The big problem I had with this, especially this first book, is it was written in 2008, and a lot of the debut first book in a series urban fantasy novels that came out around that time are terrible, and this is no exception. It's just the quality is just way down there. It does pick up pretty quickly if you stick with it, but the other problem is that there is some racism in this, and it's not constant, and it's not malicious, but it is still present. It is still very harmful. It is still uncomfortable. I will say, if you're willing and able to deal with it, it does drop off mid-series and it doesn't make a return. But obviously that is a big if, and you need to be the judge of what you're comfortable with. But in the end, I was glad that I stuck with this because the latter books are absolutely lovely. I just loved them so much. And so now we are going to get into my new list. So it's supposed to be a list of my top 5 fantasy books that I'm excited to read, and it's a list that contains 6 books. I know. It's just, I tried really hard to cut it down further, and every time I took something off the list, it felt incomplete. And so I'm just not going to stress about it anymore, and I'm going to have 6 books on my top 5 list. It's fine. We're all fine. But the very first one is Sea Witch by Sarah Henning, and this is a young adult retelling of The Little Mermaid. I believe this is the first book of a duology, but our main character is Evie, who is an outcast and a witch ever since her best friend dies. And then she sees her best friend and is thinking, okay, resurrection, but awesome, we get a second chance at happiness. But it turns out Anna is keeping her own secrets. Now, I love retellings. They are definitely a weakness of mine, but also, you guys, this cover, but I'm also intrigued because it's not just a straight retelling. I think that this is either a villain origin story or maybe the villain isn't as villainous as we think kind of story. Either way, I'm really excited. The second book is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi, and this is a young adult series. It might be an adult. I'm not entirely certain. People seem to be of a mixed opinion on this one, but it has at least 2 books. I'm not really sure how many books in total, but this one is set in 1889 Paris, and we are following a motley crew of thieves. And the leader is Severin, who has been asked to pull off this heist, and if he does, his reward is going to be his inheritance. And from what I have heard, this has some pretty strong more found family vibes. It's an interesting cast of characters, and I'm just so excited about it. The third book on this list is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. So this is an adult urban fantasy book where every city has a soul, and New York City has 5 souls representing the 5 boroughs. And in this particular book, those 5 souls have to come together to protect New York City and stop an ancient evil. I am really excited. I have never read N.K. Jemisin's novels. As of last night, I have at least read one of her short stories, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. And so I'm very excited to get into this and see how she twists the urban fantasy genre, because I just think it's going to be good. I just really do. Book number 4 is The Bird King by G. Willow Wilson. And this is an adult historical fantasy set in 1491 in the last sultanate of the Iberian Peninsula. We are following our main character of Fatima, and she is a concubine to the Sultan. And there is an envoy from the Spanish Christian monarchy who has come to negotiate the terms of the Sultan's surrender. Now, Fatima makes a friend with a woman in this envoy, and Fatima introduced this woman to her best friend, Hassan. And Hassan is the palace map maker and also has some magic where he's able to draw, I think, maps of places he's never been, and also maybe bend reality to some extent. And of course, the woman from the envoy, it's 1491, so she cries witchcraft. And now Fatima and Hassan are on the run. And I don't know what it is about this, but I am so excited. It is so different than anything that I have ever read. And I am just so hoping that this is as good as I want it to be. We'll see. After that, book number 5 is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And so the premise of this is that there is this library, and this library is infinite. And in it, you can actually find the book of your life, your history. And next to it, you can find the books of what your life would have been like if you had made slightly different choices. And enter our main character of Nora, and she decides to explore all the possibilities of what could have been. You guys, another big weakness of mine is what if, and this is one huge what if. But also the other thing that's drawing me to this is that Nora is 35. And like, I'm so excited about that, because a lot of times we get protagonists that are in their 20s, which isn't inherently bad. But the thing is, the decisions you regret at 35 are not necessarily the same as what you regretted when you were 25. And I'm really excited to kind of explore that. This sounds right up my alley. And then the last thing is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. And so this is an adult novella, and the description's a little bit vague, but from what I understand, there were these two lands and they were at war, and our main character is a royal from the land that got decimated, and she gets sent off to marry the emperor, basically that one, to unite the two lands together, I guess. But like, everything of hers has been destroyed. She has no allies. She's traveling alone, and she has nobody she can trust. And then she gets to the palace, and she is assigned a handmaiden named Rabbit, and they form a friendship, maybe more. And our young royal decides to trust Rabbit. And from what I understand, this is a queer revenge story. So clearly things go from there. And I am so excited about this. This is an author I've never read, but I have heard very good things about. So I'm so excited for this. But that is it, you guys. That's the update from my previous top 5 as well as my new top 5. Let me know down below if any of these interest you. And that's all I have. So go ahead and give this a thumbs up if you liked this video. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.